reviewed the transformation strategy and programme goals within that first 100 days. So there will be a report going to Cabinet in November setting that out. So the work that would be very helpful to do with you as a committee is to feed in your views as to the shape of that strategy and of those goals, taking account of the experiences that you have had as members in relation to the programmes that have already been completed within the council. So if I can just take you to the paper that was circulated, you'll see it's a sort of series of slides. And the first slide there is really highlighting the key elements of sustainable Swansea. So the council's been on a transformation journey since around 2015, although I think it was developed in the year prior to that. And in sustainable Swansea, so for those of you who are new councillors, this will all probably not be familiar, but there were 4 work streams. And each one was sponsored by a director, and you can see those work streams there, so I won't go into those, I won't repeat those, but underneath those work streams there were then 14 delivery strands and 50 projects. So it was very much, the transformation programme at that time was seeking to do lots of things across the whole council, some of which were cross-cutting, looking at staff costs, but some were quite service specific. And so within those delivery strands, you'll see there was one around commissioning, and that included reviews of 17 specific service areas with a view to identifying the most appropriate model of delivery in the context of the council's corporate priorities and medium-term financial strategy. And I think and others you'll be able to tell me, but certainly in terms of the discussions I've been having with officers, that those commissioning projects seem to be very much the heart of that transformation programme, and were seen to be the most successful element of it. But having said that, there were lots of other smaller projects running alongside. And overall, in that period, that 2015 to 2019, the council delivered recurrent cost savings of around 70 million, and that programme was seen as being very important in the contribution, or helping enabling the council to make those savings. So since then, in 2020, there was the next sort of iteration of transformation was being developed, and along came COVID and changed everything for all. And so it's really good timing in terms of having a discussion with yourselves about what you think that programme should include. But before we do that, if I could sort of pause and just see whether there are any reflections on what has gone before, what you thought worked well, what didn't seem to work as well, and what elements you think might be either taken forward and repeated, or things that you thought actually we didn't make the most of that opportunity and perhaps we should revisit it. So can I pause there? Is that all right, Chair?
Thank you very much, Nez. So we will be taking any questions or comments or thoughts on this presentation from anybody? I apologise, my eyesight is a bit poor in here, so looking at the screens is going to be very difficult for me to identify if anyone or names. Okay, Councillor Hale, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, hi. During that brief report, you mentioned there were some significant gains through 17 key objectives. Could you highlight the significant gains?
Yeah, what I was saying was those 17 commissioning reviews. So there were 17 reviews undertaken into a range of different services, and the outcomes of those reviews, the feedback that I've had from officers was those were deemed to be very seen as very important in the overall programme. Well, that's for us to discuss. If you're to see whether or not you share the view that those were successful. I think some, without having the detail of them, and that's something which is subject to a lessons learned review, which is currently underway and being reported to the Scrutiny Committee in January.
I can't. I was going to say, if you could highlight the successes.
So, well, I'm not able to do that at the moment because, as I say, this lessons learned review is underway.
Okay.
And having not been part of the council during that period, I don't have that information. This session is about you giving us some feedback on your perceptions of those programmes before we start to look then at the next phase, if you like, but I can assure you that lessons learned is being done and is programmed for the Scrutiny Committee in January the 17th.
I was only just going to say that seems a bit. It's going to be very difficult unless we're aware of lessons learned and aware of what significant gains were made through those reviews, because I can't remember. It's going to be very difficult to really have any sort of input today.
Input into that lessons learned process?
Well, what I'm asking is, what were the significant successes that will reshape as we move forward? And if we don't have them successes in front of us today, then we really can't enter into the discussion about how we reshape services. Sorry.
No, I think today we're talking more at a level of principle, though, because as I'll come on to explain, the thing that drives transformation is what are your corporate priorities and what's your financial position. So what change do you need to make as a council? And at this point, those things are still in development. So the timing is not ideal for this committee in that sense, because it will be a process that develops over the coming months, and it won't be until we have clarity around our corporate plan and our medium-term financial position that we will be able to finalise the next iteration of our transformation programme. So this exercise today is very much about seeking your initial reflections on those before we start to think about what are the transformation goals that we're likely to need looking ahead when we think about the financial constraints that we know we're going to be facing, the challenges we're going to be facing around increasing demand, impact of cost of living, etc.
Right. Well, from my perspective, it's cutting the agency cost that the authority are burdened with.
Okay.
Moving forward, more substantive posts, because jobs always create regeneration, don't they? Historically, economic regeneration is created by creating jobs. And I think I mentioned in a previous meeting that we heralded a report that said that Swansea was one of the few councils, well, in fact, Swansea was going to be one of the top councils to come out of COVID as I think the most resilient in Wales. And the key to that was the fact that we were a very big public sector employer. And I think that's got to be maintained.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hale. Anybody else? Questions, comments, thoughts?
Councillor Leslie.
Yes, Councillor Leslie.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I want to raise something that has been worked on in the past and certainly I think needs to continue, and that's work on co-production. In particular, I'm aware that whilst I support the workers in the communications department who are the sort of backbone of consultations, I think experience has shown that however well the consultation is being done, people just do not necessarily respond to having to fill in surveys. And I don't think it's an issue specific to us here. I would say it's probably true for all local authorities, probably all organisations. And I think the other factor, not just the sort of negative one of the consultation not really being as good as we would like it to be, I think also it misses the point that co-production actually involves people who are going to be affected by those services deciding on how that process works. And that to me is more efficient, more effective, more cost effective, which is something that certainly we're going to have to be aware of. Whilst our council has been very well run, I feel, from a financial point of view, we've got real issues coming up in the not too distant future, and so anything to try and be more efficient and cut costs has got to be a good thing. So I want to see us and I noticed that the list of things that were decided in July didn't mention co-production, and I certainly want to have that added to our work programme, and sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A response from Nez?
Thank you. You may be aware that through the Economic Recovery Fund, there was some funding provided for us to engage with a third party to support us in improving the way in which we deal with co-production, and we have just appointed a partner to work with us to identify some key areas where we want to co-produce. Maybe that's around, for example, what are our priorities for the future, so co-production around that, but also in discussion with leadership, are there particular services or areas where there might be an opportunity to help, as you say, co-produce and design in terms of designing how services are, what services are required and how they're delivered. So that's a piece of work that'll be ongoing in the next year or so.
Thank you very much. And just on the back of what Councillor Leslie has says, you know, it's just, for me, it's just to re-emphasise the importance of co-production. And I worry about that, especially in light of the cost of living crisis and also the rising energy bills. So it seems as though we have a bigger pandemic after the pandemic, and we've now come to the end of Achieving Better Together 2022. So I think it's very important, you know, that this goes into our work stream and how we protect the organisation going forwards with the next crisis that we've got in our hands. Any other comments? Councillor Haley, I see your hand is still up. Is that a new hand or?
It is a new.
Is that a legacy? Okay.
It
Go
is. Just interested to know who our partner is with the co-production project.
Sorry to cut in here one moment. Is it all right with you, Councillor Haley, if you put your camera on when you speak? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you very much.
Hello. Yeah, if you could tell us who our key partner is.
Yes, I can. Just bear with me 2 seconds and I'll tell you exactly who it is. It's Co-Production Network for Wales, Co-Pro Lab.
Oh, I've never heard of them. Should I have heard of them?
I think Co-Production Network for Wales is a fairly major kind of player in the co-production world.
Is it third sector?
I believe it is, yeah, third sector.
Oh, it is third sector.
I believe so, but I can certainly provide that information to you, Councillor, if you'd like it after the meeting.
Definitely. Thanks very much.
No problem at all. OK, so I'll move on if that's OK, if there aren't any other thoughts on that. So the next slide really just sort of frames transformation more broadly. And there are different across Wales, whether it's in local authorities or other public sector bodies, transformation has been a bit of a buzzword, if you like, over the last decade, and it's the approaches that have been taken have been different across different councils. And as I say, the approach that was taken through Sustainable Swansea was very much an approach of we're going to try and change lots of things all at the same time, and that had some advantages in that it meant there was a lot of activity going on, and there was some significant individual successes. I think lessons learned will show. But in other organisations, the approach has been more about recognising transformation as a major sort of cross-organisation activity that focuses on a smaller number of major programmes. And so here I'm just describing that, you know, to be clear that this isn't about incremental improvement. It's about really significant change. And why do we need transformation? Because as I say, in some organisations, you might think actually that transformation programme looks more like an improvement programme. But transformation arises, the need for it arises when you can't actually do what you need to do without making a significant change. And that is usually occurs as a consequence of an external stimulus or an external driver. And we've got a number of those facing the council. I don't know if colleagues have seen the budget monitoring report for tomorrow, but we are at this point in the year facing an overspend position already. And that is before we take account of the pay award. So, you know, and we're not in any different position to any other council in Wales, but as a consequence, you know, the cost of living crisis doesn't only impact on our population, but it's also impacting significantly on the council's finances too. And when you roll that forward, so if you combine that with energy costs and also the fact that the cost of living crisis is likely to increase demand on some of our services, there's a sort of perfect storm coming in terms of the challenges we're going to face, where we're going to need to be providing more potentially with significantly less resource. And so, you know, in terms of how we do that, yes, you can do the slash and burn, which some of organisations have tried in the past, but that is not sustainable. It's not in line with 5 ways of working. It's not, and ultimately it puts your services under threat. So transformation is absolutely critical in terms of helping the organisation manage the challenges that it's going to face. And so when we think about that, the transformation is the larger scale. How do you change the operating model of the council? What is it that we need to look at? What are the major cost drivers, and what action would have a significant impact and as quickly as possible, given the scale of the challenge I think that we're facing? And that's likely to be in the realms of digital transformation, workforce transformation, as well as some key service transformation programs, for example, in social care and education. So just moving on from there, as I said at the beginning, the difficulty in the sense that at this point of having an in-depth discussion with you about what the transformation programme will and won't include is that we're at the point of developing the corporate plan for 23 to 27, and we're also at the point of developing the medium-term financial strategy. And whereas in past years, you know, we might say, notwithstanding the pandemic years, We don't expect that to be dramatically different, but actually the economic situation that we're facing, both in terms of our communities and in terms of the council, is so significant that it is likely to have quite an impact on what we're saying our priorities are, because our priorities have to be in part influenced by what we can afford. We won't have clarity around our financial position until later in this calendar year. So at this stage, we can only think in sort of quite high level terms about our transformation plans for the next 5 years. But that said, there are some general or high level goals that we could think about, and obviously then there would need to be significant detail built underneath these. And thinking about what colleagues were just saying about co-production, you know, that sort of fits into this sort of high level kind of principles or goals that we would be seeking to achieve. So you can see, if you look at that slide, there are some suggested goals there, and these are for discussion. These aren't, you know, we won't necessarily see these in the final in the final strategy and programme, but it's to stimulate that discussion about what's important to us in terms of what we are trying to achieve through that transformation. So again, I'd like to you know, invite colleagues' comments and thoughts on those, or indeed other if there are other goals or principles that they think we should be applying.
Any thoughts or comments from anyone? No, nobody. Okay. Well, for me, I think one of the key goals there is the number 6 one, which is to develop a motivated and committed workforce that is innovative, supported, skilled and customer focused. And I think this is very important at such a very difficult time. Again, you know, banging on the cost of living crisis, which this time around, far more than what COVID did, in terms of COVID having disproportionate effects on certain, you know, communities or certain groups of people, the cost of living is going to have a far more, you know, effect, because it's going to start from within the organisation. It's going to start from staff, you know, and struggling with income, and after paying all their bills with the rising energy bills, not having enough disposable income, you know, to survive on. And when you're at that level, how do you even support yourself, not to talk of supporting the community that you work for? So I think that's very, very important for me, as are the others, of course. Do we have any other comments? Anybody thinking about anything they'd like to say or share? Nope, nobody's hand is up.
Oh, sorry,
Is that, Councillor Leslie?
Yeah, just really to say that we're in a slightly catch-22 situation. I appreciate that we haven't got enough information, picking up on what Councillor Hale said earlier, in a way to review what's been good in the past and what's not worked. But on the other hand, we need to be looking at what we should be doing for the future. So we're caught between two things here. So I think it's a bit difficult to actually come up with any more comments. That's why I've been hesitant to say anything more, because I don't think there's anything more we can say at this moment in time. We need to know more about what did work in the past, and we haven't really got enough information on that at the moment. Thanks.
So the suggestion I would have, you have I think 8 meetings between now and the end of the financial year, something like that, and it may be just looking at your forward work programme that there would be benefit in us having another discussion once that lessons learned report is available and we have had more information on corporate priorities and the medium-term financial strategy, to be able to inform and shape that programme as it develops. And that for me would mean looking at a discussion probably in February, depending on when the meeting is scheduled in January. It may be that we can do it then, because the report, as I say, is going to the scrutiny committee on January the 17th. So depending on the date of, oh yeah, we could do it in January, on the 24th of January, and then you would have, you know, it's very difficult, you know, to provide that information at this point, because yeah, it's not available. And so, you know, I think maybe a further session in January would give you more information to be able to make more of a contribution.
Sounds a good idea to me. Thank you.
And is there no way at all that we can cite this report before it goes to scrutiny in January?
I think I think you could see some of the outputs beforehand, but it wouldn't be complete. That's the problem.
Thank you very much, Nez. So I guess we'll have to wait until January. Yes.
Just one question, and I'm unclear as to how to word it based on the fact that I don't have any information here. My question was going to be centred around the concept of free ports. And what I don't know is whether I saw in the press yesterday, like most of you, Neath, Port Talbot and Pembroke are working on a free port bid. Swansea at the moment doesn't seem to be, but I don't know whether there is something in the background. And based on this concept of transformation and the 6 points that are here, I can certainly see that there would be room for a free port bid. You may have that in action in Swansea. I really don't know. And I just wondered whether that is a consideration for the, for the officers.
Thank you. The answer is I don't know either, but I can certainly ask my colleagues in the Economy Environment Department to. But absolutely, that's the sort of thing that is transformational. Yeah. Exactly.
Thank you very much. So if there are no other comments, we would like to move on to the work plan for 2022 to 2023. And I'll pass it back to you again, Nez. Okay, there we are.
I have to put my password in to access my computer.
Microphone.
So on the list of items to be scheduled there, you'll see it on the in the papers. You have 5 items to look at between now and the 25th of April 2023. And so really I have discussed the sort of the best timing for when the CDC's contribution would add the greatest value to the work that's going on, and have a couple of suggestions to make in terms of the timing of when you look at individual items. But I guess it also is the question of how much depth the committee wants to go into, because in an hour, inevitably, generally speaking, it's going to be quite a superficial look at whatever the issues are. So it might be for some you want to have a couple of meetings, and you want to have a discussion and then come back and then decide what recommendations you might want to make to Cabinet. So I'm sort of feeling as I go here in terms of what the committee's expectation is around how much time you'd spend on each item. So I don't know if you want to pause there and see what people's thoughts are.
Thank you. Definitely looks like we're coming back to the topic on transformation after we would have seen that report, after it's gone to scrutiny, that is. And if we're looking at scheduling that discussion on the 24th of January, we still have 6 other slots, meeting slots, and there are 5 topics that have been suggested. So it would be good to hear from, colleagues what topics of those 5 they would like to prioritize, and which ones, if we've got one more available slot, which of the topics we would like to come back to. If you've got a copy of your work plan in front of you, that should be helpful. Otherwise, I can read out the topics. Councillor Leslie.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. As I say, it was unfortunate I couldn't make the July meeting, but a couple of things. One, I know I keep banging on about it, but I think co-production has got to be very much priority and isn't even in that list. And the other one I'm a bit puzzled about, very important. Swansea is the first human rights city, but I would say we've got to be very careful here in that the Strategic Equalities Board is looking at that, and there's also a dedicated, as far as I'm aware, a dedicated group looking at that. So I'm not so sure how we would actually fit in with their work, because what we certainly don't want to do, obviously, is duplicate discussions if they are already progressing this. But if it does become something that we still want to look at, that's got to be fairly urgent as well, because the date that is being looked at is to actually finalise and be able to declare this in December. But as I say, I'm not so sure we should be looking at it myself anyway, unless we've got papers from the Equalities Board as to where they've got with it. But co-production, please.
Thank you, Councillor. So in terms of Human Rights City, you're right, there is a Human Rights City steering group, and that also feeds through into the Strategic Equalities Group. I, like you, wasn't at the last meeting, so I don't know kind of how these topics were identified, but in terms of making a contribution, if the committee wants to make a contribution to that subject, actually discussing that in December, the opportunity is for the committee to contribute to the development of the action plan. So in December there is an event being organised which will be our declaration, as you say, of Swansea as a human rights city. But over the period of November through to January, the steering group and partners are looking at developing an action plan for what we will do as a human rights city. So that's not just in terms of the council's contribution, but all of the partners who are part of it. And so there would be an opportunity, if the committee wanted to contribute to the development of that action plan, and a good time to do that would be in December. In terms of the others, just to give you an indication of when might be an appropriate time to discuss them, and notwithstanding your comment, Councillor, about co-production, so you may want to prioritise co-production over any of those that are already on the list. The Cabinet is taking a paper on a post-pandemic working model for the Council in October, and that is basically establishing the principles of what the working model should be as we are coming out of the pandemic, and agile working is certainly part of that. And what that report is going to recommending is that each service applies the principles that are in the paper to their work, and that guides the working model for each service. And as I say, agile will be part of that. So the next phase of that will be about the services going and doing that work. So it might be a good opportunity to talk about the agile working policy in October. That would be very timely. In terms of recruitment and retention and staff, that is a feature that is coming up repeatedly, challenges that services across the council are facing. So that one might be a good one to do earlier rather than later. And customer contact strategy, again, very important, but we're not yet at a point to be able to have developed that sufficiently to be able to have a detailed conversation with yourselves. So hopefully that helps give you some support in terms of identifying the timing of your work programme.
Councillor Walton, I'll come back to you if you don't mind. Do you have any thoughts on this what Nez has just said?
Well, I think I've got to repeat what I've just said. I mean, as I say, it's unfortunate I wasn't there, but I definitely want co-production included, and I'll be interested to hear from the rest of the committee if they agree with that or whether they want to stick to this particular list. And I would still say that I think we've got to be careful about the human rights city, that we've got to be working with the others, and we need to know where they've got to and not have a discussion in isolation. Thank you.
Thank you. I share your views on the human rights city, but also take on Nez's points that there will be an opportunity for us to make contributions when they come to developing the action plan later in the year, which might be a good opportunity for us. So my thinking is if we deferred the discussions on human rights city to possibly our next meeting, well, the meeting in December, if that's okay with, you know, all colleagues. And then I think it's not a question. There's no argument about whether co-production is going to go on the list or not. It is on the list now. It's a question of when do we want to, how soon do we want to have this discussion, which if we're thinking of as soon as possible, will either be in the October meeting, which is our next meeting, or in November. I think that between co-production and agile working, we can work out which one we want to come in October and which one in November. Sorry, my eyes are terrible looking at the names. Councillor Matthew Jones.
Thanks, Chair. I'd like personally, I've got a problem with co-production coming up the list in October or whenever you think is right. But I'd also like to see the rewards and recognition of staff discussed sooner rather than later. And I think that then links into our recruitment and retention of staff potentially as well. And sometimes the agile working policy, if we're making it easier for staff to work within the authority, then we've got more chance of keeping them, along with the rewards and recognition scheme as well. So I'd like to see, you know, those, I think some of those link into each other as well. So I'd like to see those discuss sort of sooner rather than later. Just my opinion, though, Chair, okay?
Thank you very much. Yeah, I totally agree with you there, that those three do link in with each other. However, we're not going to be able to discuss them all three in one meeting, seeing that the meeting is only an hour. So we do have the choice of whether we want to stick those three and yeah, those three, that's rewards and recognition, agile working, recruitment and retention, sometime before December. But then we've still got co-production to fit in. So I don't know, I leave it open to suggestions on what we want to see in October. Then let's just move, yeah, month by month. What would the majority of colleagues want to see discussed in October?
As I said, I'd like to discuss the rewards and recognition scheme personally sooner, definitely before Christmas, and if we have to leave one of the others I've mentioned till after Christmas, then, you know, so be it. But that would be my preference, please.
Thank you. Do we all agree, or no, sorry, you were going to say something?
I was just going to say that I think both the agile working and the rewards and recognition actually feed into recruitment and retention, in the sense that you don't know what you're recruiting on until you've decided things like your agile working policy and your rewards for your staff, so that in a sense the recruitment then follows on from that. So in terms of the order in which they might need to appear.
Thank you. Councillor Leslie?
Yeah, I tend to agree with both previous speakers that those three go together, and I would start with rewards and recognition and then go on to agile working, then recruitment. So can we do rewards and recognition next month?
Can I just ask the members what you're looking for in terms of the discussion around rewards and recognition, just so that I'm clear what you're looking for us to provide for you to be able to have the conversation that you want to have.
Councillor Leslie still has her hand up.
Sorry, that was a legacy.
Sorry. Oh,
That was a legacy.
A legacy hand.
Yeah.
So,
Back to you, Councillor
Matthew's
Jones.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. I probably should decline interest you now, as I'm a member of a neighbouring authority, Neath Petawba Council. But there is recognition and discount schemes available to staff for retailers and for various staff savings, that sort of thing. If we can get businesses and stuff to sign up to that, so staff get discounts around, in whether it be in shopping for purchasing stuff, or whether they're able to eat out and stuff like that. I think that's a starting point maybe where we could go with it.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Councillor. So I just wanted to clarify that we're not talking about remuneration per se, we're talking about rewards and recognition. Yeah, that's fine. Certainly we can take that in October. If that's something committee would want to do, we can provide a paper setting out what we already provide, and looking perhaps beyond to other organisations and see what they provide too, to help facilitate the discussion. Would that be helpful? Yeah. Okay. In terms of co-production, just coming back to that one, because we have just made this appointment of this contractor, there would be, we could bring a discussion about the work that they will be doing, and have a discussion about whether or not the committee wants to make suggestions about the work that they do with us over the next year, particular pieces of work potentially, if that would be helpful. Yeah,
I see a couple of nods there, so yeah, sounds like they're in agreement. Councillor Joe Hale.
Yeah, could we have a copy of their terms of reference, please?
Yes, I'm sure that you can. I'll circulate it after the meeting.
Okay. I think we're making progress now. So we're on to November now. What would we like to see then? Do we want to slot in the agile working policy discussion in November? Yes, are we in agreement? Yes. Right, thanks very much. I take that as a yes for November. And then that takes us then to December, where we had thought we would slot in the human rights city discussion, but colleagues might think that recruitment and retention might want to come in there, or any other suggestions for December, and move human rights city on to January. I don't know, open for discussion. Yes, Councillor Matthew. Oh, sorry. Sorry, go Councillor Leslie, and then we'll go on to Councillor Matthew.
Yeah, I think do the three staff one after each other. So do the recruitment and retention in December, because again, we keep saying about the human rights city, it's more a case of how we take that forward rather than looking towards the declaration. So I think that can wait till January. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Matthew?
Yeah, I'd agree with Leslie there. I think if you do them as a block 3, and then, I think recruitment selection is a massive one as well, for the authority. And yeah, I do them as a block 3, and if we can get it done before Christmas, great.
Great, thank you very much. Are other colleagues in agreement with this? Yes, thank you. So then that means we will be do we agree to take Human Rights City discussion into January, or would we like to take on something else? We've still got the customer contact strategy and co-production. So we're in January now. Any thoughts? Yes.
Did we not have transformation for the second time? That's January, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay, so we're returning back to transformation in January, and we're on to February now. Sorry, I don't mean to be rushing anybody. I'm just very conscious of time. Yes, Councillor Leslie.
Yeah, I would say that customer contact and co-production tend to go together. So again, I would like to see them in consecutive months, which in fact is going to work because they're the ones that are left really. So maybe human rights, again, I suppose that would be better for February. And then we're running out of months, so aren't we? Could customer contact and co-production be looked at together?
I think they're both quite substantive topics on their own. So I think if, given that you only have an hour and a half, I think you'll probably struggle to do both of them justice within that time. But I do wonder, given what you said, Councillor Leslie, about Human Rights City, and given there are other forums involved with members' involvement, looking at that, whether or not that's the priority, or co-production is the higher priority, and Human Rights City you could come back to in your next term, maybe.
Thank you. Just to make us aware that we can, if we find that we're running out of time for those discussions, as wide as they would be, we can schedule special meetings if we all agree to that. Otherwise, we can also extend meeting times if we all agree to that. So I think usually our meetings are an hour to an hour and a half, but then, depending on what we all agree and how much time we take into those discussions, we can either extend meeting times by half an hour or organise special meetings. So should we just schedule in those other topics and see how we go and take it from there? If we need to schedule, extra meetings, we do that. If that's okay with everyone.
Yeah. If I can come back in just quickly, I would say that what would be useful is if we could have some written information on the Human Rights City, where they've got to, what's happening. So we then got a bit more information to work with, which means we might find that we could start looking at that and then gradually link it in future meetings, rather than necessarily having to look at it all in one go. Does that make sense? And yes, I agree. If we need to have extra meetings, I'm fine with that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Les. So can I suggest that for now we focus on what we've all agreed on between October and January, and then perhaps towards the end of the year, Nez, if we can get that written, whatever written submissions there are on the Human Rights City, and we can get emails around to sort of get that conversation going on whether to move topics around, if that's okay with everyone. Yes, I see nods, so I take that as an acceptance. Good, thank you very much. And I think that brings us to the end of the work plan. Does anybody have any questions or any comments before we round up? Yes, Councillor Matthew.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's just on the point of if we, we need extended meetings and stuff. I think as long as, from my own personal perspective, as long as that's sort of related to us beforehand, then I don't think there's, I don't think there's been an issue for myself. If we think it's going to be a 2-hour meeting, then let's put a 2-hour block in the calendar, so we all know what to expect then, if it's something more sizable that we think we're going to talk about. So like co-production or the contact center stuff as well. So yeah, I haven't got a problem with that, or extra meetings, Chair. So yeah, as and when.
Thank you very much. I think definitely we will be given enough notice so we can block it off on our calendars, as there's so much going on, isn't there? Thank you very much. If there's nothing else, the next meeting now will be on Tuesday, the 25th of October at 2 p.m, same time. And thanks very much to everyone for coming, and thanks very much for your presentation, Nez. Enjoy the rest of the day, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Excellently chaired. Thank you.